Hey, I want to show y'all something that I stumbled upon. You see over here, here's Long Island Village right here, of course. And if you look over here, you see this line running across. This is the Bahia Grande. And see that line running across there? I've been looking at it for years, and that looks like an old road. Then I found out the other day, you see it kind of extends right here. You can kind of see it. It's the old railroad track. It's the old Port Isabel, Brownsville Railroad. So I'm going to zoom in here. It should give you a close-up. So you see how it looks like a road? Well, it is. It's a railroad. So if we go all the way over here, where it goes on shore, there's the railroad tracks. So the railroad tracks run all the way across. And they stop over here somewhere. Let's see. No, they're still going there. Okay, they stop when they get to this thing. It looks like it's gotten covered up or something right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over here. I'm going to park right here on 48, and then I'll fly the drone up here, and then I'm going to fly the railroad tracks with the drone. So while I'm flying, I don't have a whole lot to say. When I get to flying on there, I've got a guy, John, is going to do the audio for me on this. So I'm going to give a little bit of a history. If I can see what history I can find, I'll give a little bit of history on here. Okay? Zoom back out so you can see where it is. Bahia Grande, Long Island Village. I arrived out here where the tracks go ashore, and I realized that what you're seeing on Google Earth is not tracks. It's piling that they put in and put the tracks on top of it. And look across on the other side as we fly down this track. Looks like they have some kind of retaining wall that's over on the left side of it, running parallel with it. There's a piling in over there. I'm not sure what that was for. But anyway, we'll fly this thing. I'm going to turn you over.
The Rio Grande Railroad ran from Brownsville, Texas to Port Isabel, Texas, and was first completed in 1872 as a narrow-gauge railway. It functioned primarily as a freight line to transport goods from the coast into northern Mexico. The Rio Grande was the only railroad in Texas and one of the few in the United States to be built to a track gauge of 42 inches. Its route was relatively direct from Brownsville to the coast but required 15 bridges, including a 15,550-foot trestle across the Bahia Grande, which you're seeing below. The line defaulted in 1910 but was reorganized, and moved its track northward, avoiding the coastal areas that had left the road highly vulnerable to hurricanes and floods. It was converted to standard gauge in 1925, but this bankrupted the company once again. In 1928, it emerged as the Port Isabel and Rio Grande Valley Railway, which lasted until the end of 1940. One of the main reasons cited for building a railroad that ran from Brownsville to Point Isabel was to break the monopoly on freight and passenger hauling held by Richard King and Mifflin Kennedy. The two partners owned a fleet of 26 steamboats that had operated on the Rio Grande since the end of the Mexican War. Many of the so-called 49ers made their way to the gold fields of California by landing at Brazos, Santiago, followed by a riverboat ride up the Rio Grande as far as the boats would travel. From there it still was almost 900 miles to the gold fields. The partners amassed a fortune during the 1850s by hauling passengers and cargo from the wharves at Brazos Island to Brownsville, where it would be offloaded onto horse-drawn carts and wagons. Many businessmen resented the high rates set by the two and decided to form their own railroad. The original stockholders included Simon Celaya, H.E. Woodhouse, Charles McManus and John S. Ford, otherwise known as Rip Ford. While doing research for this, I discovered the following article and the photo that is now appearing showing the route of the tracks. One day in late January 1891, the train to Point Isabel was held up by bandits. The rails had been loosened near Loma Trasada, about 12 miles west of Point Isabel. As the train came into sight, outlaws pulled the rails apart, causing the engine to derail. 8 heavily armed masked men sprang out of the brush and ordered the engineer and passengers to reach for the sky. Robert Kingsbury, The conductor tried to pull his pistol, but one of the outlaws stuck his gun into Kingsbury's stomach and growled, "Drop it." As the passengers were being blindfolded, one of the gang hurriedly climbed a telegraph pole. Mrs. Frank Thielen Jr. was looking up at the bandit as he reached out to cut the wire. A sudden gust of wind blew the edge of his mask up, and she instantly recognized him as a man she had seen in a Brownsville store earlier in the day. One of the passengers, a traveling Presbyterian minister, threw his wallet containing about $500 in cash into some high grass and recovered it later after the thieves had left. After robbing them, the bandits locked the passengers inside a boxcar. A passing boy heard their cries and freed them by breaking the lock off with a length of rail. The bandits escaped with over $80,000 in silver coin. Large rewards were posted and 2 of the men were quickly captured. They had been traced by an iron wrecking bar made for them by a local blacksmith and from tips offered by various citizens. The rest of the gang escaped into Mexico. Most of the money was recovered, but some of it is believed to still be buried somewhere on the prairie between Brownsville and Point Isabel.